Ben Phiri. Welcome to the show, my brother, man.
It's a pleasure, man. I'm excited, my brother.
You know, man, I always say, and I think I've spoken to a few of my colleagues about this, that, you know, we always want to talk about issues and stuff, and you always go to like the highest expert on this, you know. And sometimes like the message gets lost, bro, because, you know, you can't relate to that stuff. It sounds so like textbook. So I wanted to reach out to a brother of mine, man. I know we've had plenty of conversations. We actually been having some very interesting ones before we had this going, you know. But I wanted to give you a salute, man, on the show, because I know you transformed your life quite dramatically, if I have to use that word, man.
Yeah, I crawled into it. That's the thing.
You crawled into it.
Yeah.
But hey, you know, as brothers, I think we find ourselves in situations like that force us to change, or just like, man, look at your life, brother. Yeah. What have you been doing?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So I think, let's get into it, Benito. You are a lawyer by profession. But let's just start off by, you know, how did you get into this, man? And why law?
Yeah, you know, so, you know, the crawling analogy is like pretty dope to me, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel like everything is like a system of trial and error. And funny enough, even law is like that, you know, especially in this country, because if you're a court lawyer, you know, you're trying out things, you know, like and then
so there's no safe way.
You know, it's like you're just trying out stuff all the time, right?
Okay.
So this is what happens, right? I'm in matric. I get there and I write a lot. I'm just writing. The school newspaper belongs to me. It's like my project, you know, like it's So I'm like, you know what? I actually want to be a philosopher. It's so weird. Man. I'm like, I actually want to write. I want to write for a living. You know, I want people to feel my ideas, engage with them, you know, all of that kind of stuff, right? And I pick up, there's a course at UCT, a philosophy course. So I'm going to study philosophy. Right?
Wow, okay.
I apply to UCT, only UCT, nothing else, no VITS, no UJ, no whatever. I apply only I'm like, I'm going to Cape Town.
Wait, and your high school was in Joburg?
Yeah, high school was in Joburg, right? And how Cape Town came about is because we'd been on soccer tour. Yeah. And I just remember like just seeing the mountains, the beaches. I remember going to Boulders Beach. We were staying in Simonstown, Boulders Beach, and I could hear the ocean roar, you know, like at night. And I was like, this is incredible. Like, you know, this is the kind of energy I want to be around, you know? So I applied. I didn't get in. Yeah. Funny enough, one university.
Nothing.
I didn't get in. So I had to improve my marks. So I spent the next year post-matric improving the marks, you know? Okay. And then I apply again, one university, right?
Same university.
Yeah. But this time I get in, right?
And still for philosophy.
Still for philosophy. Right. Yeah. And I get to the week orientation. I see the philosophy lecturer. He's in a tweed jacket. Yeah. He's got patches. He's got big hair. You know, I look at this guy. I'm like, do I really want to be this guy? Like, honestly, like...
This guy looks like a little bit of a nut, man.
I'm like, you know, in that time, you know, the picture of a successful professional, it's like a, clean suit, nicely shaven. You know how it goes, right? I'm like, I don't know if I want to be this guy, right? So that same week, I then enroll for a mixture. So I do a philosophy, French, and law. Degree.
Okay. Wow.
I've never done French. This is my first time doing French at university, right? I've never done it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to be like a student for the arts here. Yeah. And I think, law is a good mixture because there's a way of imparting ideas about social justice, about what the world is meant to look like, how individuals are meant to behave, how we're meant to be effectively, you know, governance, politics, it all fits in. It's a melting pot, you know. I'm like, actually, maybe I can just, you know, mix these things together, right? Sure. But I have a good time in philosophy. I'm a philosopher. I write, I think deeply. And I have an amazing time. I have an amazing time in French. I read French books, you know, like all the way to third year. Like I'm writing in French, I'm reading in French.
So
I'm
now you're
writing
fluent
exams.
in French, right?
No, I've lost it. It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah. It needs a bit of practice, right?
It needs a lot of practice.
Right.
So, but then what happens is, you know, philosophy challenges a lot of ideas around humanity, personality, psychology, language, because you construct meaning through language.
Sure.
And, you know, when the degree is done, I'm like, you know, it's actually time to just do a law degree because there is a student loan. It takes a while to be a philosophy professor and be known and whatever. And a law degree at least can give you a good start at the beginning. So I continue with the law. I find it quite stimulating. It's extremely stimulating. It's very enriching. There's a lot that goes into it. It challenges me deeply around my conceptions of how I hold, you know, a viewpoint around the world. And I say to myself, actually, this is it. This is what I'm going to do, you know. There and then, as I'm going through it, I say to myself, you know what, there's a problem in South Africa. We have a race issue that we've inherited. We all know. I say to myself, I'm not going to work for a white law firm in South Africa. I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
I'm going to do my articles, but then after that, I'm going to try and get into an international law firm. So I do my articles in a Jewish firm here in Rosebank, and then I join an American law firm. And yeah, like afterwards, after the 2 years, I found something that the universe just sort of conspired. I'm in a top 10 American law firm, and it's the ride of my life. You know, it's the ride of my life. I'm traveling across the continent. I'm working with lawyers from everywhere in the world. So that's how the law thing came about, you know. And by that time, the student loan was paid off.
Because you had everything, you had done all the work anyway throughout your years, right? So, I mean, as much as you say you crawled into this, man, and I'm listening to a lot of what you're saying, like, you know, you saw this professor, you had this picture of what a professional looks like, and also, you know, thinking deeply. I think it's something that I think we had a conversation about that, you know, talking about our brothers specifically, like, why are guys going through so much and they just like not coming out of that? You know, it's like we're all in these shells that we're afraid to come out of. And like you're saying, man, you had to think deeply to construct, to find out, like, why am I like that?
Yeah.
You know, do you think it's something that our brothers need to spend a bit more time on, man? Just like, you know, internalizing certain things, like, why do you think like that? Why do you hold these beliefs?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think actually it's just a humanity thing, right? And actually just side note before just going into that. Yeah. So I'm the professor now. You can see my hair.
Yes, sir. As you can see. And I said to Ben that when I grow up, man, I want to be like Ben with the haircut. Trust me. We hit it there, bro. We hit it there.
But I think humanity, right? And I think this is real, right? Because I think we sort of, at least as adults, there's so much inbuilt into us that you never deconstruct, right? You forget that actually how I learned to trust the world is my experience on public transport, for instance, as a young kid, as a young black kid, or my experience with my family, you know, or, you know, how I learned to engage with the other sex is, you know, the safety that my parents give me, for instance, right? You know, if you have a dad who's a certain way or a mother who's a certain way, that impacts a lot of how you go into relationships. And I'm using relationships in general because it's not just romantic relationships. It's the same thing that plays itself out in almost every single iteration. Every relationship you have has got a strata that is built on something that you're actually not thinking about. So you come to me and you say something to me, which is just you, right? But I sit back and I take it in a certain way myself. But I don't know that it's actually reminding me of a moment which didn't feel so safe, which felt like I was being disrespected, which felt all of that kind of stuff, right? And I'm sitting here, I'm having a conversation with you, but I'm in that moment. I'm that 14-year-old child or 8-year-old child or whatever, and you are conversing with that child in that moment. But if we could just step back, right? If we could just step back and say, KG is saying this to me. I know, I trust his intentions. I really trust his intentions. So why is it making me feel a certain way, right? And if we can just shift that, don't make it a 7-day thing. I spoke to KG today, 7 days later, oh, that's what was happening. If I can have it instantly,
right there,
like I think that's the consciousness that I think a lot of humanity is missing. And I think particularly men too, like it's a real thing for us men, because we're not in our feelings a lot. We're not thinking about them a lot. We're not considering what's happening a lot. So, but I think we really need to crawl towards that, like that's the thing that we should.
Guys, I think this crawling, and I love this crawling analogy, Ben, and it's such a crazy one, because the whole manning up conversation, we are told to be a man, and no one says that, no one says, guys, here are the steps, crawl through these steps, and then through your crawling you'll get to the walking, and then you'll eventually be that man. We're all just being told, hey man, be this guy. And then it's just like, okay, well, let me be, and in whatever forms and whatever way we come across, that's the man that we are, Those are the men that we're seeing today who are being bashed. And and when I look at it, man, I feel like, man, I don't think we should even be saying that without even understanding that person's story. Because we don't know where they come from. Bro. Yeah. I don't know what that guy who killed someone yesterday or the guy who raped his girlfriend. Trust me, man, I have every right to say to that man that, dude, you are a piece of trash, whatever. Yeah. But I do not know that man. So until someone actually speaks to them, whether it's a family member or whoever it is, and find out the story, then there's a way that we can then, okay, man, this guy is actually still in his crawling phase, bro. Yeah. He's 50 and this guy is still crawling. You know? So I love that, man. It's such a powerful way to look at life. And I appreciate you for bringing those words. Yeah.
Man. And just to jump in, I think there's a lot of pain, KG. There's a lot of pain that people are bringing in, right? There's a lot of pain. So the rapist, right? Sure. You don't know what's happening there, right? I mean, there is the very few who are just completely just off the chart, But when you think of just a human and how they develop, you bring a lot of pain into every experience you have, right? And not all of us can articulate that pain and understand it in the moment, Like if you're going through a very difficult time with your partner at work or whatever the case may be, there's very few people who can connect the dots between what I've gone through in my life, because it doesn't only have to be in childhood. Yeah. In your life as a whole, pain doesn't only happen as a child. Right now you could be going through the most traumatic experience. Like like it's my mother has Alzheimer's. It's painful. I feel like she's forgotten me, right? But to sit and be able to be like, actually, there's a feeling of being lost, a feeling of being forgotten in that moment, when someone has turned their back towards you, and just correlate and say, actually, this is what it feels like, right? And not act out the feeling, sit in the feeling and recognize it and say, actually, this is fine. I'm allowed to feel like this. I'm allowed to, and I take it all on board, and not act it out. The problem is we don't know it. Before you know it, right? The pain is there. You're shouting. You're doing whatever. And you're cheating. Whatever the case may be, you're acting it out. But you haven't actually gone to it. You haven't actually just sat and be like, actually, I'm feeling the pain. Let me just shut myself down a bit and just sit with it. I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna die.
Because the problem is, I guess they say we men like to do stuff. We are doers, man. So whenever we're confronted with a situation, I think we always feel like, hey, I need to do something to fix that, instead of sitting in that feeling and like resonating, like what is okay? No, it's actually not a bad thing. This is a moment for me to learn. Or man, this actually happened to me back then, 5 years ago, or like just yesterday, man. Some of us are battling with stuff that we battled with yesterday, and we're approaching it in the same way, and that's why we never get out of that.
It's the sitting in is I think the biggest challenge, because we taught you have to do something. Sure. You always have to take the next step, I come definitely from a family, both my mother and my father, where pain was not recognized. It's like you come and you're like, I'm struggling. Sure. It's like, get out of it, snap out of it,
Yeah. There's no time for pain in black families, bro. I don't think so, man.
Exactly.
Like, now what? Oh, really? Dude, you'll be fine, bruv.
You'll be fine.
Just get on that.
Just get on with it, right? Yeah. But you're forgetting that actually there's a whole physiological thing happening here, right? I'm feeling a certain way. My body's feeling a certain way. And you can't separate that, right? And it catches up to you. So it's important to let that process, let it pass.
Phiri, I know, man. I know you've been through quite a a lot of situations, young brother like yourself. I think you said to me that you got married very early in life, man. I wanna just get into that. What was your mental space like at the time? Were you even ready for that kind of commitment, at that age when you did it? And by the way, how old were you when you did that?
Yeah, I was 29 when I got married the first time, right? Because I've been married twice and divorced twice. And,
man. Listen to that, brothers, man. And to speak to Ben at this age now, I met Ben, I think you were on your second marriage, bro.
Yeah.
And, speaking for me on what I saw personally, man, there's been such a change, man. And I'm glad that, people say that when people divorce and go through those situations, they become bitter and they lose their lives, But for you to be standing here and even be willing to share that story, man, it's commendable, bro.
Yeah. No, you know what? Love is beautiful. Love is a beautiful thing. I think it's one of, together with actualizing yourself in whatever endeavor you are engaged in, I think love sits right up there, to be loved by somebody and be able to put your heart out like that to somebody is actually the biggest act of courage and freedom for me, right? And going back to the first marriage, I didn't know what I was doing. Sure. I don't want to lie to you. This was my high school sweetheart. At the time, I felt you are in something for a long time. Yeah. Even if you're not comfortable, you're responsible for that person's feelings. And I remember the trigger was her mother passed away. Her mother passed away. And I felt that it was time for me to man up. That's what manning up actually meant, to make someone feel a lot better when their mother has passed away. But that was actually wrong because, we all have our emotions that we must navigate. And it's not for anybody to help us with our emotions except ourselves. So that's what happened. I was trying to help this person with a difficult period in her life by trying to be a beacon of stability and a show of I'm actually going to be here for you even though you've lost someone you really love. Yeah. But that's not the reason to get married. That's not the reason to get married, right? It's not the reason to get married, right? It's crazy. And it didn't last. I was in a relationship with this person for 13 years. The marriage didn't last a year. Right? Wow. Because that's what happened. And I remember having the chat with her. I was like, this is just too much for me. I've taken on way too much than I can chew. And I don't believe I will be able to be in a way that you expect because the motivation is completely divorced from me being in my truth. Right? So that's what happened, right? And it was a spectacular fallout. It had all the drama and all the, but in the same light, I go again, I do it again. Nah, let me do it. And this time I'm in love. I'm enamored, fully, deeply in this thing, right? Oh, but here's the thing. I don't know that the love is actually a cover here because it's covering for a lack of affection, a lack of, that I'm not learning to find in myself, right? At that point in time, right? And you know what happens, right? Because now this person's there and you say to yourself, okay, now I've got the person who's giving me the affection, so I must return it again, right? The responsibility component. I'm going to return it. I'm forgetting about who I actually want to be. Other than just to return, I just want to return and just give and give and give and give. But forgetting what actually there's a person that I've got to nourish. Man. There's a soul that I've got to nourish. There's a being that I've got to nourish too, So that one ended with me feeling like a piece of biltong. Like I'm finished.
Yeah, I have nothing to give.
Nothing left to give, right? And then I spent a long time single, right? And spending time with myself around actually who am I? Yeah. What do I love? What gets me going? If everything else around me shriveled and burned, what is the core that I would hold on to that I know would keep me going and sustain me, right? And that was a beautiful period. That was an exceptionally beautiful period, right? And I think you were part of it.
That's when a man is in the mountains there, man. That's when like that analogy of Jesus going to the mountaintop, man, just to like replenish, and like gather his energy. Yeah,
exactly. Sure. And I think we need that, right? Because we spend a lot of time in relationships forgetting the relationship with ourselves. As men, like we forget that I actually need to have a relationship with myself. I need to know, what is the thing that is absolutely inviolable? Like no one can get to me about something. If someone comes and says, you're a douchebag because you do that, you can say, actually, you know what? There's a shield around me because I really know myself. You are misunderstanding what I'm putting out. I've got very pure intentions around what I'm putting out. I understand how what I'm putting out may be triggering something in you in the same way that sometimes what you put out triggers something in me. But at the end of the day, you are getting the best of me. Like that's it. That's
and
really unapologetically. Yeah.
No, I love that, man. And it's what we're saying, that men are always raspana, Joe. You're always on the grind, man. You're going home, you have to love your wife, you're at work, you have to be this guy. But we don't take care of this guy. This guy, he does everything.
Yeah.
You do the hard lifting, the soft touching at home. Hey, the kid needs this. You like everywhere, man.
Yeah.
But like, there's never a moment for gents to actually, and when you do have those moments, actually, well, we're going to go play soccer, get drunk, and like, man, you tired, bro.
Yeah.
There's no energy left for you to actually focus on like the internal kind of stuff.
Exactly.
And, within your space of getting divorced and now reaching the point of starting a business, in that time, that journey, how did you feel like you tapped into like your vision a little bit, your purpose? Did you ever feel like, okay, maybe I've been just living and just working and doing whatever, but now I actually need to just go inside, man, and like live for this thing? Did that lead to you starting this business and like falling in love with your work? Was that the trigger for it? Is that why where Benito is today? Was that like the makings of the Professor Benito that we're seeing right now, man?
Yeah, I think to a large degree, it's not all of it, but it contributes a big factor. I remember I started the business 2017, and 2017 was a huge year for me, right? I got into this Gupta thing because I was head of legal at McKinsey. It was hard. It was hectic emotionally, right? And literally when it started, my second wife left.
Wow. Okay.
She left.
Was it because of the?
I don't know.
Okay.
There were other things happening, but it happened. I remember it was my birthday on the 29th of June. The first newspaper article came out. Wow. Everything was all over the show. That was a Friday.
Yeah.
On the Monday, Eusebius McKinsey is on his show saying, we want Benedict Phiri here on 702 to come answer these questions. Friday, my ex-wife has moved out the house. Like literally, it happened within a week, right? Wow. And in that period, I'm like, like it can't get any more deep. Like I feel like I am so overwhelmed. I have nowhere to go, right? But what it did is it released the shackle of responsibility. I think that was the most beautiful thing that happened to me because I was like, okay, if I don't have a wife to think I need to look after, if I don't have a wife to think I need to provide for, and all of those things that you put into your head as a role of a man, I've got the freedom to do whatever I want to do. I can experiment with whatever I want to experiment with. I can, and that's when I was like, I'm going to jump into this business because if I end up on the side of the road with nothing to eat, it's all good. It's just me,
like,
right?
Just doing me right now. Yeah.
So I think the ability to give yourself a freedom as a man is so important. To feel free in whatever you're doing, whether you're loving somebody, whether you engaging in your own pursuit, your own professional endeavor. I think that is such an important thing, to be free, because you are yourself at your most free, right? And that has been such a beautiful foundation, because from that I was able to love my son freely. I just got the feeling of this is what it is to be free. There's nothing to lose. There's really nothing to lose. You just give it your all. You just give it your all. That's what freedom is. You just give it your all, right? And from that, you can love the next person freely.
Sure.
You know, there's nothing to lose, right?
Yo, man. And Ben, you know, you touched on your son now. I mean, that's something we gotta dig into. You know, I think you had was your son from your first or your second
marriage?
From your second
marriage. Yeah.
Okay, so you're a bit more mature by then, right?
Yeah.
But how was that now transition from like, okay, well, the mom's always been there, and now I have to explain to my kid now that, hey, man, dad is gonna be living in another house, and mom's gonna be there. You guys will see each other on these days, and just co-parenting, man.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you hear stories about this stuff, and some of them are not pretty, man. You know, that's why some of us are like, hey, I don't know if I would have kids, man. But, like, let's try and, like, bring it, you know, what's your experience like, man? And maybe our brothers can learn from this, you know? Yeah.
So initially it was terrifying. You know, it was terrifying because you hear all the stories around how important it is for a child to grow up in a combined household or whatever the case may be, right? So I was terrified. I was disappointed in myself that it was my actions that led to the demise of my marriage and therefore my child not having, you know, there's a lot of shame and guilt around that. So initially, like, there was a lot of working through shame and guilt, particularly, you know. But, you know, I made sure, I fought very hard to have as much time with him as possible, because it's also important that he's raised by a man, right? And, you know, men introduce a security factor for children, you know. And, you know, because it's risky, you know, he's doing flips in the pool with you as his dad, or you're throwing him up in the air, and that creates a confidence and all of that, right? It was difficult with his mother because she was angry at me, understandably so. I was angry with her, you know, so we didn't get our footing for a long time. I think it took about 3 years before we could actually get to some kind of a sensible conversation around him, right? It had all its drama. Sometimes he wouldn't be dropped off when he's meant to be dropped off. You know,
and you're like,
what's going on, right? And you know, so but that's people going through their emotions, and so, you know, the co-parenting thing, I think, is dynamic in that sense. And I think once you can get over the initial emotions and really put this little kid, my little boy, at the center of it, it's become the most beautiful thing. And the parenting journey also is beautiful because he now has you to himself. You know, if he's sharing his feelings with you, my son loves sharing his feelings. He's like, you know, this boy did this today, it didn't make me feel good. I was sad, or I was happy, or whatever the case may be, because we've got a range of emotions, you know, but it feels good to give a boy the space to express his emotions within a manly space.
Exactly.
You know, it's man to man here. It's not, I can only share my emotions when I go home with my mother. You know, it's like, actually, I have my dad too,
and who I can like talk about. With this man.
Exactly, I can rap with him, and he can say to me, I'm sorry you feel like that. Or, you know what? You know, maybe you can try this a certain way, or, you know, maybe this can help with your feelings, right? And that has been, I think, the blessing for me, because I feel like my son has something that I did not have myself personally. And I think he has something that maybe some children don't have in a joint home. Because you know what? The dad is working, he comes back at 9 o'clock, he just has dinner or whatever the case may be, and it's just in the cycle. The mother's the housewife and she continues. So I've got time with my boy, right, to actually get to know him and for him to get to know himself and for me to shape that, right? Be in his heart, you know. So I think that is such a blessing that I think co-parents can build on. You know, I think if you're a man and you're in a co-parenting relationship, that is a gift that you are gifted with, and don't miss it. You know, I think people, I always say to people, don't waste your desert. Don't waste your desert. You know, like it's
come on, gents, man.